What if the biggest sapphire in the world was found completely by accident? In July 2021, a man digging in his backyard stumbled upon a strange cluster of pale blue rocks. They weren't shiny, they didn't sparkle like treasure, but what lay beneath the soil would turn out to be one of the largest and most valuable gemstones ever discovered on Earth. A sapphire so massive, experts initially thought it was fake, but it wasn't. It was real, and it would soon shake the global gem market forever. This isn't the story of a billionaire jeweler or an Indiana Jones-style adventurer. This is the story of a poor miner from Sri Lanka who was just trying to make ends meet. He had no idea that right beneath his feet was a fortune so vast, so surreal, that even the most seasoned gemologists were left speechless. And neither did the thieves, the smugglers, and the international buyers who would try to get their hands on it. The gemstone would be named the serendipitous sapphire, but its discovery would raise more questions than answers. Was it a natural formation? How had no one noticed it before? And why had it been buried in the exact spot this miner chose to dig? Some claimed it was divine luck. Others whispered darker theories of secrets buried with it and people who would do anything to possess it. But here's what we know. The sapphire weighed over 500 kilograms. That's more than half a ton. Not in rock and debris, just pure sapphire. Experts said it could be worth up to $100 million. But was it really? And if it was, what happened next? In this video, you're going to learn how an ordinary man unearthed an extraordinary treasure, but also how quickly a blessing can become a curse. From humble beginnings in a dusty Sri Lankan village to international headlines, auction houses, and even criminal investigations, this story has it all. So, stay with me, because by the end, you'll not only know how the serendipity sapphire was found, you will also understand why its price may never be fully known and why some say it was never meant to be found in the first place. And this all started with a single shovel of dirt. It began like any other day. In the quiet town of Ratnapura, known as the City of Gems in Sri Lanka, miners wake up early. For many of them, digging is a daily gamble. Long hours under the sun, hoping for a small pocket of stones to sell. That was exactly what the miner, whose name remains undisclosed for security reasons, was doing. Just a regular day, on his own land, breaking ground for a well with a hired crew. As they dug deeper, something unusual started to surface. Not shiny gems or glittering crystals, but clunky, bluish-grey stones, dull and unremarkable at first glance. One of the workers stopped and wiped a piece clean. That's when they noticed the texture. It wasn't just rock. It had the telltale density and smoothness of corundum, the mineral family to which sapphires belong. Still, nobody got excited. Stones like these weren't unheard of in Ratnapura. The region is filled with gem deposits. But something was different this time. There weren't just a few scattered pieces. They kept coming and coming. Soon, the crew realized they hadn't hit a pocket. They had hit a massive formation, a single, interconnected cluster that didn't seem to end. The deeper they dug, the more they uncovered. It was as if an entire boulder made of sapphire had been growing beneath the earth, untouched for millions of years. One worker joked that they might have found a fossilized dragon's egg. Another said they should stop and get an expert before they accidentally damaged something priceless. That's when the landowner called in a gemologist he knew from the local town. What happened next stunned everyone. The expert arrived, examined the stone carefully, then simply froze. He didn't speak for almost a full minute. Then he looked up and said, "You have no idea what you found." The formation was unlike anything he had ever seen. Early estimates suggested the stone weighed at least 500 kilograms, nearly 2,500 carats of sapphire in one piece. And that was just the beginning. Word started to spread. Neighbors came by to look. Photos were taken. And in the blink of an eye, what had been an anonymous backyard became the center of global gem interest. But the landowner was cautious. He knew that revealing too much too fast could bring danger, theft, fraud, or worse. He quietly arranged to have the stone secured and moved to a safe facility under surveillance. It was only after gemologists from Colombo, Sri Lanka's capital, confirmed the find that the media got wind of the story. International gem buyers and collectors began circling like vultures. Everyone wanted a piece, or all, of what was now being called the serendipity sapphire. Some believed it was priceless. Others, more cynical, thought it might be a hoax. But regardless of the skepticism, one thing was certain: the dig had changed everything. What started as a routine excavation had turned into a discovery that could rewrite gemological records and transform one man's life forever. To truly understand how something as extraordinary as the serendipity sapphire could be hiding in plain sight, we need to go back, not just years, but centuries. The city of Ratnapura, which means City of Gems in Sinhala, has been famous for its gemstone wealth for over 1,000 years. Some of the world's finest rubies, sapphires, and other precious stones have been pulled from its soil. Ancient kings sent their emissaries to Ratnapura in search of jewels. During the colonial period, the Dutch, Portuguese, and British all exploited Sri Lanka's rich mineral veins, shipping cartloads of sapphires back to Europe. Some of the stones that adorn royal crowns today may well have come from these very hills. But even in a land soaked in gem history, the serendipity sapphire stood out like a myth come true. Geologists believe Sri Lanka's unique geology, its ancient metamorphic rock formations and tropical weather, has created ideal conditions for gem formation over millions of years. But for a gemstone of this magnitude to remain undiscovered for so long, that was almost supernatural. Locals began spinning their own legends around the stone. Some claimed it was a gift from the gods. Others believed it was cursed, buried centuries ago to keep it away from greedy hands. The timing also felt eerie. The find happened in the middle of a devastating COVID-19 wave that had crippled Sri Lanka's economy. Unemployment soared, tourism vanished, families struggled to buy basic necessities. For a struggling miner to find a gemstone worth tens of millions at such a moment felt orchestrated, as if fate had chosen this one man in this one village to receive an impossible blessing. But the legends didn't stop there. Stories spread that the land had once belonged to a royal family, that an ancient prince, dying of betrayal, had buried his crown beneath the earth. Some even claimed the sapphire held spiritual power, that it radiated energy or caused strange dreams in those who touched it. Whether true or not, these tales only added to the mystique. Meanwhile, the gem's sheer size became a problem. Transporting and securing something so large and so valuable wasn't easy. Potential buyers were skeptical. Some believed that such a stone, if real, might be impossible to sell or even appraise. No one had ever dealt with a sapphire this size before. No one knew how. Experts from around the world began flying in, from Thailand, from London, from Hong Kong. All wanted to see the stone with their own eyes. It was now more than just a valuable object. It was a global sensation. And with that came pressure, offers, threats, complications the miner could never have imagined when he picked up that first dull blue chunk of rock. What was once the quiet city of Ratnapura had now become the epicenter of a modern treasure tale. A place where myth, geology, desperation, and greed collided under the spotlight of the global media. Putting a price on a gemstone is never easy. Value depends on rarity, clarity, origin, and size. But when experts gathered to assess the serendipity sapphire, they were stunned into silence. This wasn't just one of the largest sapphires ever discovered. It was by far the largest known specimen of its kind. Over 500 kilograms, made almost entirely of sapphire-grade corundum. A single stone, roughly the size of a child, estimated to be over 100 million carats. But here is the catch. Just because something is big doesn't it mean it's priceless. Unlike diamonds, sapphires are typically cut into small gems for rings and jewelry. A stone this large couldn't be worn or easily displayed. And worse, it wasn't flawless. Internal fractures and cloudy sections reduced its potential value as a cuttable gem. But even then, the consensus was clear. This stone was historic. Gem traders from all over the world began submitting offers. One private buyer from the Middle East reportedly proposed $100 million USD, an offer that was declined. Why? Because some experts believed the publicity had just begun. If marketed correctly, the sapphire could fetch more than $200 million, but only if the seller played the game right. That's when the real problems began. The poor miner, whose land had given birth to this geological miracle, suddenly found himself at the center of a storm. Government officials arrived. Questions were asked. Was the land legally owned? Were taxes paid? Who exactly had rights to the stone? Behind the scenes, power players began circling, pressuring him to sell or partner with larger companies. Lawyers were called in. The Sri Lankan Gem Authority began investigating. Rumors swirled that the government might confiscate the stone for national interest, branding it a cultural treasure. Others whispered that a black market deal was already in progress. The miner, once invisible to the world, was now caught between wealth and fear. At the same time, international news outlets picked up the story. The BBC, CNN, and Al Jazeera ran features on the serendipitous sapphire. Some outlets questioned whether it was real, others doubted the valuation. But all agreed this was one of the most mysterious and high-stakes gem finds in modern history. And the man who had found it, he was nowhere to be seen. For weeks, the miner disappeared from public view. Some say he went into hiding. Others say he was negotiating privately with international buyers. But the truth is more complicated. According to close sources, he was afraid of being robbed, kidnapped, or worse. No amount of money was worth losing his life over. And so the miracle stone sat in a guarded vault, away from public view, waiting for someone bold enough and rich enough to claim it. But even in its silence, it continued to shake the world. By now, the serendipity sapphire wasn't just a gem. It had become a global obsession. Investors, journalists, collectors, and even royalty began circling like vultures around a feast. The Sri Lankan government was receiving daily calls from foreign dignitaries. Museums from Paris to Dubai were offering to display the stone. Auction houses like Christie's and Sotheby's were begging for the chance to sell it. The question was no longer if it would be sold, but to whom and at what cost. Security around the stone tightened. Armed guards were placed outside the vault. No one could approach it without government clearance. Meanwhile, the miner was forced to accept protection. According to sources close to his family, he began receiving threats, anonymous messages, unmarked vehicles following his children. The price of finding the world's largest sapphire was no longer measured in dollars. It was being counted in sleepless nights. Inside Sri Lanka, the public was divided. Some celebrated the miner as a national hero, a man who had brought fame to their country. Others viewed the sapphire as cursed, pointing to the timing of its discovery during a national crisis. Religious leaders weighed in, some calling the stone a divine gift, others suggesting it should be returned to the earth. Tensions flared, and through it all, the sapphire sat silently beneath fluorescent lights, unmoved. Then came the twist no one expected. A foreign buyer, a tech billionaire known for controversial acquisitions, offered $300 million for the stone, but not to wear it, cut it, or display it. He wanted to keep it intact and launch it into space, placing it aboard a private satellite as a monument to Earth's natural beauty. The proposal sent shockwaves through the media. Was it genius, madness, or a distraction? Environmental groups condemned the idea. "You don't launch ancient geological wonders into orbit," one protester shouted outside a press conference. But others were intrigued. The notion of turning the serendipity sapphire into a space-bound artifact captured imaginations. A symbol of human discovery launched toward the stars. But the offer didn't go through yet. Legal battles over ownership were still raging. Meanwhile, black market interest in the gem exploded. Intelligence agencies reportedly intercepted chatter about an international smuggling ring preparing to steal the sapphire. One plan involved disabling the vault's security system using a drone strike. Another involved posing as museum officials to inspect the stone and switch it with a replica. It all sounded like a Hollywood thriller, but it was deadly serious. In response, Sri Lanka's Gem Authority suspended all outside access to the stone. No buyers, no media, no more public statements. Silence returned, but it was tense, suffocating silence. The world still wanted the stone, and the longer it remained unsold, the more dangerous the situation became. Behind closed doors, negotiations continued, but for the poor miner who had unearthed this impossible treasure, life would never go back to normal. Because when the world comes knocking, it doesn't always knock politely. What does it really mean to go from nothing to everything? For the miner, it meant waking up each day with more fear than excitement. Before the sapphire, he had lived in modest obscurity, barely enough to feed his family, but enough to sleep at night. Now, with the world watching and hundreds of millions at stake, peace had vanished. Every knock on the door sounded like a threat. Every glance from a stranger felt loaded with suspicion. The first cracks began to show in his relationships. His brothers, who once worked alongside him, began arguing over who had legal claim to the stone. His wife, normally quiet and supportive, grew distant. Friends he hadn't spoken to in years reappeared with business proposals and urgent needs. Some offered help. Others demanded their cut. One cousin even threatened to sue, claiming the land originally belonged to their grandfather. Money does strange things to people, but the potential for money, that can destroy them before a single dollar changes hands. The miner, once a humble man of faith, began keeping journals filled with paranoia. "I feel like I'm already dead," he wrote in one entry later leaked to the press. "They don't see me anymore. They only see the stone." Worse still, his children became targets. Fake ransom threats arrived via email. His oldest son was followed home from school. One day, a brick was thrown through their window with a note, "Sell the rock or bury it with you." That night, the family fled their home under police escort and were relocated to a secure, undisclosed location. The man who had uncovered a miracle now lived like a fugitive, and yet, in rare moments of silence, the miner found himself wondering, was it all worth it? The serendipity sapphire could still change his life forever. He could buy homes, travel, secure his children's futures. But what good was all that if he had to live in fear, isolated from the very people he loved? The media began asking similar questions. Headlines shifted from "World's largest sapphire found" to "The Curse of the Stone." Documentaries were pitched. A streaming platform offered him a 7-figure deal for exclusive rights to his story. But he refused. Not because he didn't need the money, but because he didn't trust anyone anymore. He started seeing the stone not as a gift, but as a test, a weight he was never meant to carry. He told a friend, "If I had walked a little to the left that day, I never would have found it. Maybe that would have been better." For a man born into poverty, he had tasted a kind of wealth that most of us can imagine, but it had cost him everything that truly mattered. And so, the greatest sapphire on earth remained locked in darkness. And the man who found it? He became a ghost in his own story, haunted not by greed, but by the unbearable possibility of what might have been. After months of silence, something shifted. A high-level government meeting was leaked. Inside it, officials debated a new proposal from a mysterious consortium, backed by multiple international investors, including a private Saudi collector, an American media mogul, and a European mining billionaire. The group made a final, staggering offer, $450 million. But there was a catch. The sapphire would be removed from Sri Lanka permanently. Once sold, it would disappear into a private vault, never to be seen again. This sparked national outrage. For many Sri Lankans, the serendipity sapphire was not just a stone. It was a symbol of their land, their pride, and their place in geological history. Protesters filled the streets of Colombo. Cultural leaders pleaded with the president not to allow the sale. "Would you sell the Mona Lisa if it were found here?" one protester shouted into a megaphone. "This belongs to all of us." Meanwhile, the miner was given a private audience with government officials. They told him, "This is it. Accept the sale, and the fortune is his. Refuse, and the state might be forced to nationalize the gem for public interest." The pressure was suffocating. What began as a lucky break now felt like a moral trial, one with no clean answers. The miner spent days in solitude. No phone, no media, just him, a notebook, and a single question: what legacy do I want to leave behind? His family urged him to take the money. "We'll never get this chance again," his wife said, but deep down something pulled at him. Was he willing to sell not just a stone, but a piece of his nation's soul? Then, in a move that stunned the world, the miner held a press conference. With cameras rolling and the eyes of millions upon him, he made his decision. He would donate the sapphire to a national museum on one condition: that the government set up a permanent trust in his name, ensuring free education and healthcare for gem miners and their families across the country. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Reporters struggled to confirm what they had just heard. Had he turned down nearly $500 million for public good? In the following days, his decision was met with both admiration and skepticism. Some called him a hero. Others accused him of being manipulated or pressured, but the trust was created. The museum plans were approved, and for the first time in generations, gem miners in Sri Lanka felt seen, respected. The serendipity sapphire remained in its homeland, housed in a specially designed vault behind bulletproof glass and infrared scanners. School children came from all over the island to see it. Tourists marveled. And the miner? He never appeared in public again. He had said his piece and vanished. And maybe that was the point. He didn't just find a gem. He became one, buried again. Not under dirt this time, but beneath history. Years passed. The world moved on to new headlines, new scandals, discoveries, and wars. But deep inside the museum in Colombo, behind layers of security and glass, the serendipity sapphire still sat, unmoved, unmatched. A silent witness to a story that blurred the line between miracle and madness. For the children who visited it, the sapphire became more than just a relic. It was a portal to possibility. Teachers spoke of geology and national pride, but they also spoke of one man, a man who, when faced with the weight of unimaginable wealth, chose legacy over luxury. Many didn't even know his name, just that he was the miner, and that was enough. In the rural regions where miners once labored in obscurity, things began to change. The trust he established funded new schools. Clinics were built, scholarships were awarded. For the first time, sons and daughters of gem hunters had the chance to dream beyond the mines. His decision had lit a fuse that reached far beyond anything gold or sapphire could buy. But his story didn't become a fairy tale. It became something rarer, a parable, a cautionary legend whispered in both reverence and awe. Teachers used it to spark discussions. What would you do with $450 million? Would you choose your country over comfort, your people over power? To this day, no one knows exactly where the miner is. Some say he left the country. Others believe he still lives quietly in the highlands, growing tea, watching the rain fall on the earth that once made him rich. His anonymity became his shield and his gift to the world. What we do know is this: true value isn't always measured in carats or cash. Sometimes the rarest thing a person can hold on to is principle. And in a world obsessed with taking, the miner gave. He gave away his fortune, he gave away his fame, and in doing so, he carved his name into something far more enduring than stone: history. So next time you hear a story about someone getting rich overnight, ask yourself, what did it cost? Because sometimes the heaviest treasures are the ones you can't carry. And sometimes the richest man in the world is the one who walks away.